All right, welcome back to another video, Masters. If you're listening to this, then you are the master of your reality. I am the master of my reality, and in this video, I have the honor and privilege of speaking with Versan Al-Jarrah, a very prominent researcher in this community. And so a big thank you to you, man, for coming on my humble channel. And for the extremely insightful videos that you and both your brother make. I've been watching you since 2022, back at the first interview you did with Jimmy Valley. So, Versan is just one of those people who gets it and sees the bigger picture of where this financial landscape is moving towards. So I think this is going to be a really good conversation. Now, quick disclaimer for the audience. None of this is financial or investment advice. Always do your own research and make your own financial decisions. No one has more incentive to preserve and grow your wealth than you do. So, none of these are, no one has the truth, right? These are just our individual truths based on our research and experiences. So for the audience, please just take what resonates with you and leave the rest. Now, brother, thank you for being here. And how are you doing this morning?
Doing great, man. It was such a pleasure to meet you in person. Really good energy. And, I commend you and everybody in the space that's doing whatever they can just to put information out there. So, and by the way, I'm the master of my reality as well. So thank you
Yes,
very
sir.
much.
Yes, you are. Awesome. So, yeah, and it was an amazing opportunity to meet you, Versan, in person at the recent Quantum Financial Summit in Cape Canaveral. So shout out to Mel Carmine for hosting that and allowing that amazing event so that, like-minded individuals can get together and collaborate. So
Right.
Before we get into the big picture, though, I wanted to compliment you on your channel's name. It's got a really badass ring to it, and I think I love it because it has a really self-empowering message, kind of meaning behind it. So I wanted to ask you how you came up with that name and what it means to be a Black Swan capitalist.
Sure. So first of all, it was called Blockchain Billionaire. Kind of silly, I know. But it was really after our interview with Jimmy Valley, where I talked to my brother and I said, we're going to have to change our name. Jimmy Valley really gave us a lot of insight, and he taught us how to ask the right questions about what the hell was really going on in the system. And it was so big, and it was like a black swan of all black swans, and it tied into the debt market bubble, right?
Mhm.
So because of that, I said, okay, well, we tend to capitalize on bad news. We were aware 6 days before the pandemic happened. I put some money into a mask company, a stock, right? Made good money on that. So Black Swan capitalists, we're going to capitalize on the next Black Swan event. And the next Black Swan event, I think, is the financial crisis. That's something that is coming. There's no doubt. So that's where the name came from. Very simple.
Awesome. Yeah, I love that. Well, yeah, definitely. We are in, just to kind of lay this out for the audience, we are in this 100-ish year transition period from the age of duality and separation, which is Pisces, to the age of unity and fusion, which is Aquarius. And we'll be in age of Aquarius for the next 2000-ish years. But I don't intend to get into the woo-woo of astrology in this video. But it's no coincidence that we're seeing what seems to be a concentration of change at this period of time that coincides with this astrological age transition. So it's literally written in the stars, guys. But one of the changes that we are going to get to experience during this transition is the birth of a new financial system, different from anything that we've seen in the past. And we've already witnessed and are witnessing this transformation to unity and fusion with our information. That's because of the internet, right? The internet has brought humanity the abundance of information and the ability to share that information instantly, essentially anywhere in the world. But our current financial system has not caught up with that new speed of information. And it can't, because the current digital financial system is still running on like this old 70s technology. And you can't just upgrade the entire financial system while all the money's still on there, right? There's too much risk with that. So they have to build a new financial system and then move all the money onto it, which hasn't really happened yet. And Versan, I know you're well aware of this. I'm more saying this for the audience and kind of to lay out the stage for this conversation today, but also so you can kind of get to know where I'm at with all this. I believe the financial system is changing because the world is changing. And now that the walls of cultural separation and physical limitations have come down over the past century, um, you know, people have become much more connected. And so we need a new financial system to accommodate that. And so that's where we're at right now. We're just kind of waiting for the mass adoption and ushering in of this new system, which has essentially already been built.
Yeah.
We're just waiting for the transfer of value to it. And so the big question everyone's asking is when, right? When moon.
Yeah.
And my take is whenever there's no other option for the powers to be, that's when.
Mm.
Now, whether that means no other option but to let the adoption come naturally at the extremely slow pace of regulation, or no other option but perhaps allowing a black swan event to occur that will usher in this new system much faster. Now, regardless of what side of that fence you're on, I think there's multiple ticking time bombs underneath this house of cards, and any one of them could go off and essentially force the world into this new financial system that is enabled by cryptocurrency.
Yep.
I think one of the biggest ticking time bombs of them all is the US dollar debt market. And with that, I will pass the microphone to you with this question. First, do you agree with everything I've said thus far? And second, do you think that perhaps all it could take to send the bond market, the debt market into collapse, to maybe push over that first domino, is an announcement that a U.S. regulator is either banning or going after Tether, USDT, and which Brad Garlinghouse has recently hinted at, multiple times. So maybe you can tell us a little more about Tether, what its purpose is, and if it might be the black swan event we're expecting.
Sure. So first of all, man, you said it so well. I agree with everything you're talking about. I'm going to first of all give a very brief explanation about what you said, because we have a lot to unpack in what you said, right? First of all, the big picture is very clear. If you are paying attention, and I think very few people are, we are witnessing a reset of everything. And that includes hard assets, supply chains, the monetary system, energy, and other aspects of the geopolitical landscape. And I think, again, that's why nations are escalating conflicts and even turning to war, because usually when things fail, war becomes the only alternative, right? So the situation, I think, is just heavily tied to the issuance of more debt to sustain an already unsustainable debt load. And I think there's just so much complex information involved. But fundamentally, I think we are seeing the reset of all things. So last point before I move on to Tether is that given what I just said there, I think people need to be prepared and ready for whatever is coming next. There are several steps, obviously, you can take to prepare yourself. Investing in digital assets, in my opinion, is a smart move. It's also essential to have cash on hand, as well as gold, silver, and other hard assets. Also, resources like food and water are very critical as well. And I don't think enough people are talking about it, right? There are broken supply chains, and the weaponization of the food industry is something we have seen, and we just need to be prepared for all these essential changes that are coming, no doubt.
Yes.
As far as like Tether, this is a very complex situation because, and I've done everything I can to try and expose it, right? But there's a lot of information we still do not have answers to. And I think eventually these things are going to reveal themselves, because we've covered this so many times. And there is no doubt that there is a revolving door between Tether, the stable coin backed by the dollar, right? And then the US dollar itself and the bond market, which isn't backed by anything except substantial debt. And obviously the debt market is falling apart quickly. So I can see the dollar breaking the peg to Tether a few more times, potentially even causing a situation where the bursting of the bubble begins, right? My point, though, about Tether is that there's a deep, intricate connection between the stablecoin Tether, the US bond market, and even Bitcoin. A few weeks ago, even we saw China. They sold billions of treasuries. I think I told you the story when I was there. We saw China sell lots of treasuries, right? And typically, when someone sells treasuries, someone else has to buy them. And I personally believe that there's enough evidence to confirm that the central bank, the Federal Reserve, is buying their own debt, their own treasuries, right? And shortly after, what did we see? We saw Bitcoin's price went up. And we all know Bitcoin is a product of the National Security Agency. There's no doubt about this. So, despite my efforts to try to expose these connections, I have so many questions myself that remain unanswered. Moving deeper into Tether, though, remember they've avoided multiple financial audits from the IRS. And I think that's very similar to what we saw with the Bernie Madoff scheme, because it's almost like they knew what was happening, but they didn't want to do anything about it. They did not want to address it. And we're seeing the same thing with Tether, right? So I find it very, concerning, right? And also, my question then becomes, are you hiding something? And also, we did see some news that just recently came out about stablecoins with Tether, right? And Tether is now protesting this. So I find that even more interesting. Like, what are you hiding, right? And I think there needs to be an investigation. And again, I think the authorities, the regulators that are in charge right now are responsible for many of the collapses we've already seen in the crypto industry. And in the beginning, we had no idea where the money was going. But then shortly after, we found out all the stolen money, investor funds, was going directly to Ukraine to fund more conflict and war. Again, many questions that I don't have answers to. But I think people have to be mindful that Tether is no doubt a massive bubble, and it's eventually going to have to burst like all bubbles do. And if this could be the next Black Swan event, basically, if Tether collapses, it could lead to a massive shakeup of the financial markets and also the stability of the US bond market, which is already in question, right? So a Tether collapse can certainly destroy most of the crypto market and impact, of course, the broader cryptocurrency landscape, the market, which would be very profound, potentially wiping out investments and leading to a loss of confidence in digital assets. Last thing, I know I'm going on, man, but
Oh, you're good.
I think investors need to be cautious and prepare for any potential developments that we see. And there's other ways to do this. Of course, diversify your investments into other protocols that I think are actually doing real things for the economy. And this is the digital assets I normally talk about, like XRP. So I'll take a break over there.
No, absolutely. I
I know
agree
it's a
with.
lot of information, man. Sorry.
No, you're spot on. When people talk about Tether, I think a lot of people don't realize just how connected it is and how deep it goes. People think, oh, it's just crypto, it's just a stable coin. Well, what you've just revealed is that just how connected Tether is with, the broader financial system. And it's quite frankly become a systemic risk, not only for crypto, but potentially the bond market as a whole. So Tether, in my book, is also guilty of manipulating this current crypto market by being able to print money out of thin air. But once Tether either goes away through, I guess, regulation, or just kind of fades out, maybe the Ripple stablecoin just kind of outperforms it. I think that will truly be a cleansing moment that allows this market to evolve into what it was meant to evolve into. I think Tether's what's been propping up the fraudulent market and potentially suppressing the real utility market at the same time. I don't know if you've seen any of my videos, but I kind of separate this market out into the fraudulent market, which is what we currently see. And then within that, there's this hidden market that really hasn't emerged yet. And I think Tether's playing a huge role of that.
100%.
Yeah. Bitcoin doesn't, we can just briefly touch on this, but Bitcoin does not make sense to have the largest market cap. There's no utility there. A store of value is really not utility because anything can be a store of value. It's slow, it's expensive, it's decentralized, it's not decentralized. All right. There's 2 mining pools that control over 51% of the network. So that's decentralized.
100%.
And Ethereum, the second largest, it's expensive, completely centralized, right? I don't know if you've looked at the staking pool distribution.
Yeah, it's centralized. 100%.
Yeah, 80%. It recently just hit 80%. The unknown staking pool controls 80% of Ethereum. So that's completely centralized. If they wanted to, they could make a change. They could increase the supply. They could delete the entire ledger. That's a big risk, especially for
Yeah.
financial institutions who want to use this stuff. So,
Yeah, and that's
um,
what I said, that the market was rigged, and it always has been. And
yeah,
if you don't mind, if I can expand a little bit on something,
sure.
I talk to a lot of Bitcoin maximalists on Twitter, and I try to
Mhm.
get them on the show, right? And I'm going to tell you something. This is very interesting. Many people do not know this, but I reached out to Mark Moss. Are you familiar with Mark Moss?
I'm not.
Okay, well, he's a big YouTuber, right? Talks
Mhm.
about everything. So a lot of the 90% of the information that he perpetuates, puts out there is really good information, very
Mhm.
powerful and important, right? He talks about a lot of the stuff we were talking about in the political landscape as well, and with the World Economic Forum, etc. So
Mhm.
very good information. Now, this is where it gets weird. When you talk to these people, he's a Bitcoin maximalist, right?
Okay.
Now, Bitcoin maximalists are people who usually just are very passionate about Bitcoin, right? But I think there's a new connotation that needs to be associated with them, because the way I would describe it is Bitcoin maximalists are people who are not well informed about the broader digital asset space. And these are, again, individuals who follow numbers on a screen,
Right.
artificial systems. It's all propped up without, again, a deep understanding of the deceptive nature of the underlying infrastructure. And
Mhm.
of course, its true objectives, what it was designed for. And
Right.
I think the lack of understanding in the Bitcoin maxis, sorry about that, man.
Are you good?
The lack of understanding through Bitcoin maxis puts them in a very precarious position. And I'll tell you why. It's because these are the people who promote Bitcoin very aggressively, right?
Mhm.
And of course, that is driven by significant promotional funding. You see a lot of people putting money into funding it. So basically, what they're doing, they're getting retail investors to heavily adopt a particular asset that's not even adopted by institutions, and it creates, again, the illusion of what the next big thing is. And most
Mhm.
people think it's Bitcoin, when the reality is this: the institutions control everything. And in my opinion, whether the Nassar Jassara guys are correct or not, I believe they're going to continue to do so. And this is why I believe Ripple is the answer. Ripple's technology, again, offers a practical solution for modernizing the financial system, transactions, unlike Bitcoin, which faces very big scalability issues and energy consumption. And it's kind of funny because we have a green energy agenda, right? So how the hell is this going to work? It's not.
Yeah.
And when now my point about Mark Moss, I'm sorry for getting off topic, is that when I talk to Bitcoin maximalists, let me explain something. This is true. They get very defensive, they get very insecure, and I'll tell you why. They do this because they can't engage in a proper debate or discussion, and they just simply claim that Bitcoin is like gold, which it really isn't, right? And
Mhm.
this again shows how naive people are in this space, and they lack the understanding. And I think that's also more concerning, because it reflects a significant position of the population. That's everybody. And that, of course, ties us into some of the larger issues that we don't have to talk about, but the cycle of self deception.
Mhm.
People are unable to distinguish what's real and what isn't. And
Mhm.
I think that also converges with everything we see in AI and other things. So,
Yeah,
uh,
yeah. No,
I want
absolutely.
to get off
There's a lack of critical thinking
Yes.
in the world, and I think that's what we're seeing with these one coin maximalists, especially Bitcoin.
Mhm.
The whole narrative with Bitcoin and also Ethereum is like the down with the banks, for the people. And if you apply critical thinking to that, well, the financial institutions, like you said, are some of the most powerful entities in the world. And
Mhm.
so I don't think it's realistic to assume that they're not going to be paying attention to what's happening with this technology. So
Of course
yeah,
not. There's a
yeah,
massive disconnect, and
right.
that even can tie us into the massive disconnect, what we see in the crypto space, and of course, what's happening in the traditional monetary system as well. The rich will get richer, the poor will get poorer, and that's because I don't think people are paying attention. So,
Right. The last thing I'll say on this speculative fraudulent market versus the real market is speculation will never create utility, but
mhm,
utility will always create speculation. And so we're approaching a shift where the market speculation will be driven by utility instead of just speculation driven by speculation. I kind of see like the age of this market hasn't matured enough so that the value in it, it's kind of like gotten to a certain threshold where the venture capitalist firms and the media, mainstream media can still kind of manipulate this market and sway it. But once this utility comes in, once this market evolves and graduates into what it's meant to be, the amount of value that's going to come in is going to not allow this fraudulent market to exist anymore, because the amount of value that's going to come in is just going to rise. It's going to raise the real market that has utility out of this fraudulent market. And
100%.
And I think the speculation for Bitcoin is getting saturated. And so now I think we can segue into the 5.3 rule, because I think this 5.3 rule suggests everything, confirms everything we've been talking about thus far. So I'm going to share my screen. That's all right.
That'd be great. I think you showed me some of this and you tried to explain it to me. And, I am not the smartest guy, obviously. I'm not good with technical analysis. So certainly please put it on the screen, explain it to everybody, and I'll certainly put my take in there. But I am not a technical into technical analysis because I don't know shit about it. And on top of that, also, since the market is so rigged, right? It's just kind of, I follow like the money cycles, I guess. But please.
Mm-hmm. No, absolutely. Yeah. I did. This was the image I showed you when we met. There's a lot to it, so we didn't really have the time to really, take a good look at it. But so I'll just break this down. I'm not going to measure out every cycle just for the sake of time, but this image does a really good job of summing up this theory into one image. So this is the diminishing rate of return of Bitcoin, and that rate happens to be 5.3. And so each cycle's gains are the previous cycle's gains divided by 5.3. That's the basic premise of this. What I haven't discovered. And first of all, shout out to Crypto Crew University. He's the one who discovered this. I'm just, shedding some awareness onto it and kind of trying to tie it in with XRP and some more, and our side of the community. But so in other words, by dividing the previous cycle's percentage gains by 5.3, you can estimate the next cycle's gains with an average discrepancy of 5%. So hopefully the audience can see this, but I'm going to go to this first cycle here in 09 to 2011. Bitcoin did a 319,000% gain from measuring from the low. As soon as Mt. Gox launched, the first like major exchange that really brought on the most liquidity, and when Bitcoin went above 1 cent for the first time. So from that low to the high of that run was 319,000%. If you divide that number by 5.3, you get 60,188. Well, the next cycle, Bitcoin did 62,312. So there's a 3.529% discrepancy between those two numbers, what the 5.3 rule predicted and what it actually did. So we take that cycle to the second cycle, 2011 to 13, that gains, divide that by 5.3, we get 11,756. Well, that following cycle, Bitcoin did 12,124 with a 3% discrepancy. So we take that number, 12,124, divide that by 5.3 again, we get 2,287. The fourth cycle, 2018 to 2021, Bitcoin did a 2,108%. That was the largest discrepancy, an 8.49% discrepancy. It was actually the first one where the actual performance was lower than what the 5.3 rule predicted. And so I took all the discrepancies and averaged them out. So the average discrepancy is 5.3. The minimum would be, or with the maximum being 8%. So if you take our current cycle low, which is like 15,500, and you measure up, I went ahead. So the previous cycle's gains 2,108. You divide that by 5.3, you get 398. So we should really, because this 5.3 rule has been accurate at predicting the tops since Bitcoin's inception. So we can expect, based off this rule, right? This might not continue to be correct forever, but so far it has been. we can expect about a 400% gain this cycle. And so
Incredible.
from the 15,500 low, measuring up, what the 5.3 rule predicted, that gives us around 77,000. And Bitcoin's current all-time high right now is like 73.5, I think, 73.8, something like that. So that is within the range of, of possibilities for the 5.3 rule to be in. It's already in that range. Could it go higher? Yes. And for the 5.3 rule to be invalidated, Bitcoin, or not invalidated, but an anomaly, a discrepancy we've never seen before, it would have to go higher than 83,000. So, if it does go higher than that, well, then that's just something that is saying, hey, maybe this is no longer working. But until we break that level, this is still in effect. And so I'm sure a lot of people are wondering, like, why 5.3? Well, 5 and 3 are Fibonacci numbers.
Mm-hmm.
So if you look at this little Fibonacci spiral up in the top right, you'll see 5 and 3 those are the numbers going inward as the spiral is contracting. And so I think it's 5.3 because, you have 5 in that first square divided by that line, just like 5 is divided by the decimal in 5.3. And that energy is contracting. So I kind of see this as like the natural fizzling out of a cultural moment that is Bitcoin. Just kind of
Yeah.
Would you like to say anything?
Well, I think you're onto something there, and even Ripple, for instance, their logo, many people don't know this. Their logo was inspired by the golden ratio.
Yeah.
Right. I find that to be very interesting too. I think, also Bitcoin does go in 4-year cycles with restructuring of debt, presidential selections. So I find that also to be very interesting. It has these 4-year cycles where they always play out. So, I think you're onto something there. It's just, I don't understand it. I wish I could. But I will touch on what you said. All right. So in my opinion, whether Bitcoin goes up or down, in my opinion, it really doesn't matter, right? I think Bitcoin will go up. It could very well hit $100,000 very easily, actually. And I can certainly support this because of what we're seeing at the central bank level. Money velocity is actually trending upwards right now. And that means they're going to inject more money and issue new debt, right? And that could certainly prop up stocks, Bitcoin, the bond market as well, and the dollar. So, there's no doubt that central banks, the Federal Reserve specifically, is propping up the US dollar, which is eventually going to prop up the bonds. And that could certainly take Bitcoin to a much higher price, right? But sure. I want people to understand, though, that there is also a massive disconnect in that wealth gap, what we're seeing in the digital asset space. The institutions are continuously sweet-talking the masses with digital assets like Bitcoin that have no real future, while simultaneously attacking them as well. And while they're doing this, they're also buying up everything that's cheap and has real use case. They're adopting the technologies, again, that are going to be essential for the future of where this is all going. And that's why I always talk about XRP. It's certainly a big player in all of this. But that's as much as I can go on it. Will Bitcoin hit a higher price? Absolutely. I think it will.
Yeah. Thank you for your input on that. Absolutely. Yeah. And I'm not saying this is like, oh, guys, the top is in for Bitcoin. I just find this pattern very interesting, and I'm just sharing it with people just to take in consideration.
Of course.
I think that, like you brought up a great point. The mass perception of all this in the mainstream media, they've really been promoting Bitcoin recently. You see with the launch of the ETF, right? I have my own controversial opinion on the true purpose of the ETF. I kind of think it was designed to just get one last pump out of Bitcoin for the largest holders to exit just at higher prices just in time for this emergence of the utility market. I do think that Bitcoin, I think you mentioned earlier, is an NSA government project, and they love calling it digital gold. I really don't see a whole lot of similarities between it, other than, yes, it's a store of value. I don't think most people experience Bitcoin as a good store of value. You know, if you bought Bitcoin in 2010, well, then yeah, I'm sure it's been an amazing store of value for you, but most people haven't experienced that. And so,
100%. And
yeah.
just so you know, when people say store of value, I understand where they're coming from, but I don't think they understand money. And that's why they call it a store of value.
Mhm.
How the hell can you have something called a store of value when it drops like 60% in one day like that? You know, yeah, that's not a store of value. Store of value is something that maintains its stability. And that's why I always talk about hard assets. And that's really where this is all going. And we can talk about that a little bit if you want. So, um, or whenever you're
Absolutely.
ready. Yeah. I'm, listen, man, store of value. I don't see Bitcoin as a store of value. Um, but what I can tell you is that financial institutions are going back to hard assets. And I think this is going to be complemented by digital money, digital currencies, right? That's the direction this is all heading. And one reason I hate to get off topic again and go back to XRP, but the reason I emphasize XRP so much is because it's a digital cross-border settlements protocol designed for large financial institutions and governments that practically run the world. Um, and then again, at the same time, we see governments and financial institutions running to hard assets, right? And why are they doing this though? They're doing it because there's a lot of risk associated with the volatility of the US dollar, the current reserve currency. And what is the world reserve currency? The dollar. The world reserve currency is a global reserve settlement mechanism, right? And what does XRP do? It targets cross border payments for governments. So that means it functions as a global reserve settlement mechanism, which means that XRP can potentially replace the dollar's role in global transactions
Yep.
without necessarily eliminating it. You see
Yeah.
what I mean? And many people think that, oh, no, XRP cannot be the world reserve currency. It could be the world reserve global settlement mechanism. Doesn't
Right.
mean the dollar is going to go away. I believe that eventually where this is all going is that every country will have its native digital currency, right?
Yes.
You're going to have the dollar, digital dollar, you'll have the yuan, the euro, and so forth. But these digital currencies are going to be interoperable through XRP, complemented by stable coins, which are backed by hard assets. And the interoperability of all of this, these hard assets, it's going to help stabilize and streamline the global financial system. So that's where this is all going. And I just think we're in
Absolutely.
the early stages. So when
Yeah.
people talk about Bitcoin being a store of value, where I come from on this, brother.
Yeah.
I kind of laugh at it. You know what I mean? So
Yeah. No, but I'm so glad you brought up the point about interoperability because you are so right. You're so over the target about moving from a unipolar currency world with the dollar serving as this world reserve currency for trade and whatnot to a what do they call it, a multipolar currency world.
yeah.
And those new currencies that countries will issue will likely be backed. I think they will be backed by commodities, specifically gold and silver. And so nations will redesign their own currencies in a digital form and back them with commodities, but they will need an interoperable financial infrastructure and a bridge asset that is liquid enough to serve as the bridge currency to allow all the trade to go through.
Of
And
course.
so, we have things like interledger protocol,
Yes.
Quant, QNT that are building these rails connecting the ledgers all together. And so this is what's going to create this level playing field for currencies, and
Yes. And
and
I'm glad you mentioned Quant, by the way. Quant is playing
yeah,
a very, very big role in this. So thank you for doing that.
yeah, absolutely. I yeah. But we're going to need that neutral bridge asset. And one of the things I love telling people that are new to XRP or whatnot is I say, open up Siri, or if you have Amazon, Alexa, whatever, ask these little digital assistants, hey, what is the world bridge currency? And they will tell you it's XRP. You don't have to mention Ripple or anything. Also, if you Google this, the entire page will just be about Ripple and XRP. So I think, it's clear that that's kind of the world we're going into. And that's why I talk about this fusion of, we're fusing the old ancient money, God's money of gold, and with this new digital technology that's going to allow for the most secure and most efficient financial system that this world's ever seen. And there's
Yeah.
so much opportunity there.
100%. That's, that's also how they're selling it without going down the rabbit hole too much. But, this is why I like looking at things in a macro perspective. Some people think I'm actually crazy, but it really is not crazy. I just look at things from a macro perspective because it helps me see the bigger picture of what the hell's going on. Right. And don't get me wrong, I do study like micro details. Right. It's just, I don't think they don't really change the overreaching trends that we're trying to talk about here. Now, back to your thing about interoperability, which is important. There are a lot of technologies that I think are going to complement the interoperability part, right?
Yes.
And that's why, again, it's crucial to diversify your portfolio with
Yes.
these digital assets. It's not one to rule them all. They'll complement each other in many ways. And I think just understanding that broader economic landscape of how this is all moving into and how different technologies are going to fit together, it's going to give you an advantage, as we move into a new financial system. So, in summary, I think the new financial system that we're seeing evolving is a hybrid model, right?
Mm-hmm.
Where, again, I mentioned this earlier, but hard assets back digital currencies. XRP, again, plays a crucial role in the system to facilitate the cross border payments and potentially acting as a global reserve settlement mechanism. So certainly diversify your portfolio and always keep an eye on like the macro trends. I think it just helps people understand that and navigate the transition and helps you better position yourself for the future, right? So a lot of big things there, man.
Yeah, absolutely. And before we wrap this up, I just wanted to ask you a little more question, kind of going back to the suppression potentially of maybe things like XRP, XLM,
Mhm.
also kind of tying that back to gold and silver. I think there's a reason why XRP and XLM mirror each other in price. There's not
Yeah.
really any other two assets that do that but gold and silver. So I think there might be something there. Um, Now, as for the manipulation, the suppression of it, when you have a money printer like Tether is,
Mhm.
let's do some crazy speculation for a moment. This is just everyone please take this with a grain of salt, but you know, if I was Tether and I knew about XRP, I could, and I had the money printer, I could accumulate XRP while not affecting the price of it at all by
Interesting.
shorting it at the same time I'm buying it. That if you short the same, you sell the same amount that you're buying, you're still accumulating XRP. You'll have to, fill those short positions at a later time. Maybe that's kind of why we see XRP move the way it does, like very stable, and then all of a sudden, boom, it pops out of nowhere. And
Mhm.
where I'm getting at is I wanted to ask you. I believe in a video quite a while ago. You mentioned that one of your friends had purchased a significant amount of XRP, and you guys actually watched the price go down. Is
Yeah,
that
yeah,
true?
yeah. So I didn't know these people, but I remember there was a group of people on Twitter, XRP community people, right? These are people with more funds than I have, right?
Mm-hmm.
And they got together and they planned to purchase XRP all together at once. And they did that. And the price went down. So, it's very interesting to see how it's rigged. And it is rigged. I think I tweeted this once, but I really, at this point, I am so convinced for XRP to make a significant movement, whether it's the lawsuits or this, I think it's going to take some sort of geopolitical crisis. I really believe that, whether it's a geopolitical crisis or even a black swan event in the global financial system. And I always thought that it was going to be the debt market that caused XRP to go up. That was one of my first shorts that I ever put out when I started talking about this stuff, right? Obviously, I've learned a lot more from that time 2 years ago. But I think it's going to start in the debt market because if you look at what's happening, okay, let's think about this from, again, a macro perspective. For a very long time, all the central banks and the financial institutions have been adopting the payment rails, the Ripple protocol onto their payment rails, right? So it's almost like that everything is set in stone for it to happen, right?
Mm-hmm.
What are we waiting for? It's not the lawsuit. I can promise you that much. So what
Mm-hmm.
are we waiting for? Are we waiting for a global liquidity crisis? Because that's really what it serves for. It's a liquidity tool. And that's just one of the things it does. It also creates the platform for central banks to manage and issue central bank digital currencies if they want to do that, right? I don't care what people say, there are no CBDCs. But the integration for all of this is ready to go. So what are we waiting for? And I think it's going to take some sort of geopolitical crisis to get us there. Now, I might be wrong, and I hope I am, but I don't understand how they're suppressing the price anymore. I thought it was because of nodes on the XRP ledger, and that's something Stuart Alderati talked about. He said the SEC came in without permission. They just came in and said, "Hey, we're going to put these nodes on the XRP ledger." What are they trying to suppress the price, hold it for a much bigger use case? Who knows, right? But if you look at it, and you said this earlier, at this point, it's so obvious. You don't even have to go do your research anymore. Knowing that XRP is going to be a global reserve settlement mechanism for all governments around the world in some way, form, or fashion. And then you have your XLM. XLM, by the way, is hard forked onto XRP. So I think it takes two to tango. I think they need each other to some degree. If we're going into a multipolar world, we're going to need two different currencies, possibly, right? So they could function together. Who knows? But some very big things are happening, and I really don't have the answer to that. But it's very interesting, man. It really is, and very curious. I don't know what's going on exactly.
Yeah, I think you're spot on. I think that you're right. Like the question is, well, if this is all ready to go, then why? Like, when is it going to happen? And that's kind of what I was getting at the beginning. I was saying it's going to happen when there's no other option for it to happen, and what that looks like, whether that's a more natural progression that takes a while, or if that, requires a black swan event to trigger it, that's up for debate. But
could be either or. You're right.
Right. But I think we're spot on, man. The generational wealth that we will create for ourselves and our communities by paying attention, doing the research, and taking action will allow us to create. It will allow us the financial abundance to create the reality that we desire. And so, that's what I'm all about, is just, taking control, realizing the power that you have, and become the master of your reality. And money is a huge aspect of that. And so I just think we're right on target with everything.
100%.
I was just some selfish. Sorry.
No, I said 100%. I am in total agreement with everything you're saying. And by the way, man, I'm so glad I got to meet you, because you are so smart. You really are.
Oh,
Intelligent.
I appreciate that, brother.
I'm again humbled. It's so hard to find people these days that understand things like you do. So again, I'm grateful for this, and thank you again for the opportunity just to talk with me here. And again, just so your audience knows, this is a fireside chat. We're having fun here. So this is good.
Absolutely. No, that means the world to me, brother, coming from you. Absolutely. But, I was just some selfish college kid, but I surrendered to self, and that allowed me to remember self and love self. And then I became the master of my reality.
Of course.
And Versana, I'd like to just kind of wrap up with I guess your story, how you got into XRP. We have a couple minutes left here.
Sure.
I remember you saying something about like a family meeting.
Yeah. So, love Mel Carmine. I think he has to change his title on the video, because in his title he put XRP. Saudi royals told me about XRP. That's not true, ladies and gentlemen. And I never said that on the podcast, if you actually listen to it. What happened was, in 2018, we were told to just have a family emergency meeting. We always do family meetings where, Arabs were very close to our family. So once in a while, we'll always sit down and talk about things happening in the world. Something big's happening, right? So this was different. We were getting a call from one of his business partners, my stepfather, and he's in oil and gas. And one of his friends, Khalid El Sunaid, is a family friend. He was doing a Skype call with us at the time. This was 2018. And they were just telling us about this technology was going to revolutionize the global financial system. They didn't say it like that, right? But it was going to change money as we know it. That's how it was kind of told to us. And it was just called Ripple. That's it. No one told us about anything about XRP. Vindel and I had to go do our research into this stuff. 2019, we look at each other and we're like, oh my God, Vindel, do you understand what's happening here? And he was saying the same thing to me. We realized that when they were talking about this world currency, whether it was a conspiracy or whatnot, for a decade or so, we knew that XRP was going to play a role like that. So we started investing money and started learning about it to teach it. So it was 2018 when I got into the space, but I got into the space by the fortune of somebody sharing some little bit of information with us. And we kind of just expanded on that. No one gave us any hints. No one told us anything. You know what I mean? So that's how we got in the space. And it's been interesting, by the way, this journey, because every day I'm learning something new as well.
Yes, me too. Absolutely. That's such a cool story. I love that. Well,
Got lucky.
Rashawn, do you have any final thoughts before we wrap this up?
Hell yeah, man. So my real message, man, is we are seeing immense changes in the world. It's not just money, right? And like you said earlier, money, just so y'all know, it's a tool to keep us in line, right? It's a it's main part of society, but we're seeing changes in society as well. And I think a lot of this is now going to be driven by artificial intelligence and technology. And for those who don't know, I'm afraid of technology. I know I talk about it a lot, but it really scares the hell out of me. So I just want, your audience and people to be mindful of the changes, because as we, evolve, or whatever you want to call it, we have to adapt to these technologies, to these changes. But it's very important that we don't lose our humanity in the process. And I think to some degree, a lot of people are losing their humanity in the process of this AI revolution as well. And it's something I think a lot about, because personally, I told you, I fear it. I fear digital money as well, because it has the potential to either free us or even enslave us. Anything digital for me means that we're obviously moving into a system that could be controlled. And also, you mentioned about the great wealth transfer, right? This is the greatest wealth transfer in human history. Remember, everything is being tokenized on a distributed ledger technology. And of course, I believe XRP is the forefront of this. And just for your audience, also, natural selection is very real. People do get left behind because they don't pay attention. And I think few will benefit the most, because they're doing the research, they're sacrificing their time, they're doing everything they can to stay ahead, protect themselves, their families, and their loved ones. So you can become incredibly wealthy in this transition and when it takes place. And by the way, many people do ask me, when is this reset happening, right? I'm like, it's happening already. Like, we're living right through it. So, it happens very slowly and gradually, but if you look around, it's accelerating. And I think most people still cannot see it. So last thoughts, man, just prepare yourself financially, emotionally, spiritually, because big changes are coming and we need to be mentally prepared for them.
100%. You said it perfectly. Well, I'll put our Twitter X handles up on the screen, guys. So, Swan, brother, thank you so much for joining me today. The pleasure was mine. I think we had a really amazing conversation, truthfully, from my heart, man. And I look forward to, if we have any future conversations. But that's it, guys. Thank you so much for watching this video. Hope you all found value in it. If you did, please hit that like button to help us out here. And until next time, master your reality.